It's some 18 minutes after 8. You're welcome to my banner this morning, and I'm talking student politics. Well, leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim. I'm going to bring this to you again. Leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim mission in Ghana, Alhaji Maulvi Mohammed bin Saleh, is calling for a disbandment of all political groupings in the country's educational institutions and communities. He was speaking at the 83rd Annual National Convention of the Ahmadiyya Pomaze in the Central Region. Maulvi bin Saleh said such groups are unconstitutional and their mission continuous existence breeds indiscipline in the country's politics. I want us to take a listen to him, and then I'll come back and introduce to you my guest.
Three of the country's major political parties, the NDC, NPP and CPP, all have political wings in most of the tertiary institutions in the country. The NDC, for instance, has the Tertiary Education and Institutional Network TEIN, whilst the main opposition NPP has the Tertiary Students Confederacy TESCON. There's also the Tertiary Students Charter of the Convention People's Party, TESCHART. These groups, apart from bringing young members of the party together, also serve as a grooming ground for those looking forward to taking up mainstream political positions. But leader of the Ahmadiyya mission says having young persons at these levels and the steady political gurus is a recipe for indiscipline. He has reason to believe these groupings do not inure to the benefit of society and wants them dissolved.
We must, as a necessity, dissolve and bring to halt the activities of these organized and heavily sponsored and partisanly, politically oriented youth wings or like-minded student bodies from our senior high school, from our colleges, and from our university campuses. The TEIN, Tertiary Education and Institutional Network of the National Democratic Congress, the TESCON, Tertiary Students Confederation of the New Patriotic Party, as well as the TESCHART, Tertiary Students Charter of the Convention People's Party, must not be allowed to continue.
He also believes some of these groupings he described as mercenaries for the parties must not be allowed to exist.
In like manner, we need to do away with politically motivated mercenary groupings. Politically motivated mercenary groupings like the Azoka boys and the Bamba boys. We need to learn lessons from historical antecedents, because we cannot tell what finally they are capable of becoming in the future. Mr. Chairman, history abounds in examples where such groups were allowed to grow in strength and stature until their power grew beyond control and they turned their venom on the very masters who nurtured them.
The NDC's General Secretary Johnson Asedun Ketia, who was delivering his solidarity message, had this to say.
I have listened to the very wonderful speech of the Amir, and I find it very, very thought-provoking. And we will take his advice seriously. We will be meeting with our colleagues from other political parties, and the section that deals with the parties, we will consider it and see how we can implement the aspects that deals with our own conduct.
Tiandopia, Joy News, Pomaze, Central Region.
Okay, very thought-provoking. I think the General Secretary of the NDC is right on point with that, thought-provoking, and that's why we're also picking up this morning, trying to find more answers to a lot of questions. And so I'm being joined by a student leader. I'll also be joined by an educationist on phone. But my guest in studio this morning is Idi Muhayu, Dean, and he's General Secretary of the National Union of Ghana Students. I want to say good morning to you. Your initial thoughts, because you're listening to General Mosquito for the first time and you're a bit surprised.
Yes, obviously. Before I make further comments, I would want to use this opportunity to say a very good morning to our discerning viewers and listeners out there. Having said that, now to your question. Of course, I did express some surprise that having heard the General Secretary of the NDC make allusion to the fact that they would give that a thought or a consideration.
Yeah. With the other political parties.
With other political parties. I'm actually moved by that rendition from no less a person but the General Secretary of the major or the ruling political party, I must say. To me, it's really something that we would have to interrogate further. I would disagree respectfully with him, but I'm sure we'll delve into that. This is just my initial.
But I want to ask you this. A lot of people have said, and I think that sometimes I'm also made to believe that most of you get into the positions that you get into. For instance, you're General Secretary of the Students' Union, the Ghana Students' Union, and sometimes you do this because you want to launch yourself into this whole bigger national political platform. You want to be part of the NDC or the NPP. You want them to recognize you, and that's why you take on positions such as the one that you've taken on. Is that something that goes through your mind even before you stand for these positions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Assuming without admitting that that is what goes through the minds of many, I'm not sure it's a bad idea. I mean, politics itself is not, for want of a better expression, a devilish enterprise for one to say that associating yourself with politics is something that ordinarily should raise concern. I mean, we are all political animals in one way or the other, to the extent that we all strive to lead our constituents in one way or the other. Then that makes us politicians. So to that extent, I'm not sure it's actually bad for one to associate himself or herself with politics, albeit at the tertiary level, because that is the highest level of education in the country. So if you don't groom yourself at the highest level of education, then where else? Mind you, we are barred from delving into or engaging into serious politics at the elementary level. Junior high, primary school, senior high, politics is bad until you get to the highest level of education. This is where we groom, I mean the grooming starts. So to that extent, I'm not sure anybody should begrudge or have any issue with that. This is a country we have all agreed that we want to toe on the democratic tangent. So to the extent that we have all accepted that democracy thrives on the multiplicity of political parties, because that is the essential ingredient of measuring a viable democratic movement. Because before a country can be said to be democratic, obviously one of the criteria has to do with the multiplicity of political parties.
But if that's your mindset back in school, in the tertiary institutions where you're supposed to be helping solve issues of students on campus, you're thinking national politics even at that point. Is it not deviating from what you yourself stand on the platform to campaign for?
There is actually a very thin line between service to the nation generally and to your immediate constituency in school. I think it's the same thing. Service to your students and service to the nation is almost the same thing.
But you know how, for instance, NPP and NDC has become. These are two hot political parties. 2016 is just next year. And I don't have to tell you what goes on in an election year, for instance.
Yes.
So if you know, the school is a ground to breed persons who will be entering into these two major political parties, then we should be worried.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I have not totally disagreed with him. I would be very quick to also admit that these political groupings on campuses are also, if you like, human institutions. So to that extent, there certainly would be some excesses. So where I tend to agree with him, as if he had opined that we ought to strengthen our monitoring mechanism to ensure that these organizations do not do activities that are not in tandem with the expectations of the general Ghanaian populace, and for that matter, the educational institutions they find themselves. So heads of institutions, including religious leaders like the respected Amir who made that comment, they ought to liaise or collaborate with heads of institutions and make sure that these political party organizations on campuses really do what is expected of them in order to, as it were, curtail some of the excesses that are oftentimes associated with that, because you cannot really rule out that out completely, because to the extent that it's a human...
We can do without them. We can do without the TESCONs and the TANEs on campus. Making
that averment is tantamount to saying that politicians should not be allowed to campaign. Politicians should not... excuse me, maybe what I learned...
No, I'm not... People in... students in secondary schools who are voting age, they vote as well.
Ideally, when you look at our educational structure, 18 years, I mean, you're supposed to complete senior high when you are 18 years. So, I mean, they're just very few. But tertiary level, that I can say.
But there's something I want to ask you. There's something I want to ask you, because you're students of the University of Education, but maybe you can link it. Because I want to ask you, how useful are these groups on campus? You've got one on your campus.
Yes, I've got.
How useful are they?
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me. When I said the comment I made earlier, which you apparently misconstrued me, was that if you say we should ban or disband some of these political party groupings on campuses, it's tantamount to saying politicians should not have any mechanism. We should not create a system so that political parties would ensure that students get their message. Because actually that is more or less a conduit.
Don't you listen to the radio? Don't you watch television like every other person would do? You'd get their message.
No, they also would want to get people, groom people, because political parties must have perpetual existence. So, I mean, how do you get perpetual existence when you don't groom people to come and then take over the mantle when in the event that you have waned off? So you certainly would have to groom people. So to that extent, I think they've been very helpful from where I sit. I think they've been very helpful because essentially the work they do has to do with conscientization. They preach. The political parties have the opportunity to come and preach their ideologies to the students. Let them appreciate the dynamics of the various political parties they religiously wish to associate with. And for that matter, appreciate the entire Ghanaian political jurisprudence. I mean, that's the highest level of education, for God's sake. So if you don't practice politics at that level, then I wonder where again. Is it when you come to the job market, then you now have to start from scratch, I mean, ground zero or something?
So to that extent, you think they are useful on campus?
Mind you, he sought to link that with the level of indiscipline, and that is the connection I don't get.
But you see, I mean, there's another connection here. And the connection is the division that it breeds from, that earlier stage. So if you're dividing students from that point, you're already coming into national politics with that kind of thing. There's NPP, there's NDC. Is that good for us?
Maybe we should ban national politics too. Maybe we should not do, how do you call it? We should not tolerate political parties too. Because if I mean, everything, the extent to which it is done, that is what matters. I mean, what we have to do is to ensure that the excesses are curtailed, and not to suggest that we should not do at all. I respectfully, though I respect the opinion he opined, but I really disagree with him and want to challenge his outfit to make sure that they strengthen their monitoring mechanism and ensure that these groupings really live up to expectations, rather than seek to disband them. I think that wouldn't help matters. Mind you, at the tertiary institution, we learn political science too. I mean, these are courses that are studied at the tertiary institution, most of our universities. So what's the big deal? I really don't get the connection.
Okay.
When he sought to, as it were, suggest that should be disbanded, I don't get the connection.
You disagree with him on that?
Yes.
All right. Let me seek another opinion from an education is a very good one, and that's Mr. Anis Hafar is joining us via phone. Hello. Good morning to you, sir. Happy New Year.
Good morning and a Happy New Year.
So, I don't know if you've been following, but the leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim mission in Ghana has called for a disbandment of all political groupings in the country's educational institutions. I don't know how that sounds to you, first of all.
Well, you know, I cannot comment exactly on what the person said because I'm not privy to it. So what I would do is that I'll speak in general terms. Now remember that when we begin to embark on a policy of democracy, it involves everybody, especially those who are 18 years and older. Now the issue is this: the discussions have to take place, debates have to take place, issues have to come out to the fore, and they have to be discussed in the open. But how we do it is the issue. So what I'm suggesting is that when you begin to look at any university, and I've been involved in one too. I remember when I was in the U.S. at a time when there was agitation against apartheid. I mean, we were part of a group that really embarked on demonstrations in the U.S. so that corporations do not invest in South Africa. It was a political agenda. But the point is this: now these issues have to be discussed at our campuses, but they have to be done in very structured ways. Whoever speaks against it, I'm sure, is concerned about the issue of maybe destruction or anything that will not be palatable for the smooth running of any organization. So it's very important that when these discussions take place, it's structured so that there's even faculty involvement in it. But it has to be done professionally. We cannot pretend that the issues that are going on in Ghana can be resolved by themselves. We need student participation in it, but it has to be organized, it has to be distant, it has to be civil, it has to be polite, and it has to have all stakeholders involved in it. But the way we do it is a critical thing. But again, I think it will be very interesting that even at the campuses themselves, lively debates take place all the time, so that when new issues come up, they are not so new that we are not used to the process. So this has been my contribution, that we need to have faculty involvement. It has to be organized, it has to be civil, so that we begin to understand that we are driving Ghana in the direction that is appropriate for the development of the country.
Are you not worried, Mr. Hafa, about the sort of division that it tends to create, I mean, that early in a person's life?
Do that again.
I'm asking if you're not concerned about the sort of division, because that's the other argument, that you're dividing students that early, even before they get into the national politics itself.
Whenever there are issues, there are opposing sides to every issue. Sometimes issues are such that the differences are small. But again, I keep saying that we have to get used to it. But then it has to be civil. We have to begin to look at things in an intellectual fashion, that the focus is that we are moving the country forward. The worst thing that can happen, though, is where we begin to be destructive, or where we begin to use the wrong language, or where we begin to see our opponents as enemies. We shouldn't do that. So that in a typical university setting, for example, it will be very interesting to have young people even change sides and discuss the issues as if they were on the other side. You see, education is a learning process. It has universality to it. Ghana is not the only country in a democracy where discussions are taking place in the country. Everybody is involved in some way, especially young people who are 18 plus, because they will vote. Now, my question is that somewhere along the line, I think the political parties themselves, especially the representatives, have to be mature enough to learn to groom the young people in terms of how we can begin to discuss things amicably. Ghana is one country that belongs to all of us. So unnecessary divisions are not needed, except that we have to begin to look at the ideas, not target people, not look at gossip, but look at the bigger ideas that can propel the nation forward. And then we begin to understand that the differences really are small, because our needs are the same. We want good roads, we want water, we want quality education, we want good health services. So these are things that have to be debated all the time. But the environment in which we discuss these things are very critical. So I'm suggesting again that the responsible people in the various political parties have to now learn to groom the young people in terms of how these discussions can be done amicably. without enmity, because we are one people in one direction for a wonderful country. And my concern is that Ghana is a very beautiful country. It's a peaceful country. We have a lot of resources, but the mindset to develop it, it's where it's at the box of the matter now. And it starts with young people begin to understand that they have a great stake in the future of this country. And those discussions must continue.
All right, Mr. Anis Hafa, very important thought you're sharing with us here on the show this morning. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Anis Hafa is an educationist. A good or bad influence on tertiary education, student politics. That's the big question I'm asking this morning here on my banner. My guest is still here. Edie Muhayuddin is General Secretary of the National Union of Ghana Students. When I come back, another ex-student leader joining me for the conversation. But still keep your thoughts coming through on Facebook. We've posted something on this on Facebook. Get there and give me your comments and I'll share it with everybody else. It's facebook.com/Joy News on TV. Stay with me here. It's still my banner on the AM show. 43 minutes after 8. Is student politics a good or bad influence on tertiary education? That's our big conversation here on the show today, coming after that call by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission, the leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission in Ghana, who is asking for a disbandment of all political groupings in the country's educational institutions. We heard from Anis Hafa, who's an educationist, a very important thought he shared with us on this matter. Also, Edie Muhayuddin, General Secretary of the Ghana National Union of Ghana Students, but we're also being joined now by Edem Agbana, who's a former SRC president of the University of Ghana, Legon. I've got to say Happy New Year and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Have you, were you a member of TESCON or TAIN back in school?
No. I did not belong to any of those political party groupings on campus.
Okay.
Yes.
But you're joining any major political party now? I mean, you're out of school.
Yeah, I will surely join a political party in the future because we need to produce leaders for this country. And fortunately or unfortunately, our leaders have to come from political parties, so surely I will belong to one of them very soon. Yeah.
Okay, do you have ambitions of that as well?
Likewise, yes. So, I've always believed in service. I always love to serve.
But you are serving now, even as general...
No, I want to, as much as possible, serve even to the highest echelon of political, if you like, authority. Okay. I want to get there so I can impact.
So you
on a
have
larger
political ambitions?
Definitely, yes.
Once we are student leaders, we just have to, move from there to become national leaders. We are just learning. This is just the preparatory grounds, because that is the reality on the ground. When you look at the current crop of leaders who are moving and shaking the political landscape, almost all of them started as student leaders, the likes of our black. In fact, most of them actually headed some of these political party groupings that people are now calling for its total disbandment. That is why some of us are having serious reservation in trying to think along that line.
Okay, Adam, let me take your thoughts on this. Should we scrap them?
No, I think that the call by the leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission is not totally out of place, and I will not just condemn it outright, because I'm sure that call is warranted by several occurrences in the past. However, the challenges or the problems of these political party groupings on our campuses can be solved, not necessarily by doing away with them completely, but we need to introduce sanctions and regulations so that we purge the way and manner in which they behave. When you look at the activities on campuses, to a large extent, sometimes they become very harmful even to the university community. Okay, so
describe some of the normal activities that would typically go on.
Yes, even prior to the 2012 elections, the University of Ghana issued a directive asking that all these political party groupings should not organize any activity on campus because of the rising tensions that normally is generated in an academic community, because somebody is entering a lecture hall and the person is in an MPP or NDC t-shirt, and the others who disagree with the person will be hooting or may heckle. And even about 2 or 3 weeks ago on UCC campus, these two party groupings had a clash and one person even got injured simply because according to the TESCON guys, they had a meeting and the venue clashed because it was so close to where the NDC guys were having theirs and all of this. And so it happens. Even in Egypt, last year there was this issue that they had to ban all these groupings on campus because a lot of protests. Some people were protesting because they were for the military leader, others were against, and all of these things happen. I mean, it happens in our political groupings. Even me, when I was campaigning for SRC president, several times you enter into a room and someone asks you, are you TANE or you are TESCON? Because a person identifies himself or herself with any of these groupings and would want to vote for you based on your membership of some of these things. You have situations where some of these groups even send mass text messages to students asking them that on our register, this is the person that is a member of this association, so vote for the person. I mean, these activities. But I think that all of this can be, we can do something about it by introducing regulations and sanctions. But doing away with them totally, for me, is not the way to go at all. It's not the way to go.
There will always be excesses. Once it's a human organization, there would always be excesses. But civility is the key word. So we must strive to achieve civility by introducing regulations, as he said, so that we can monitor the way and manner they conduct their affairs. Okay,
so I'm encouraging this conversation on Facebook. I'm going to take some of your comments on facebook.com/Joy News on TV. The first person to try something just started off laughing and asking for what? Why should we ban it? Samuel Nuno. Emmanuel Akrofi also says, for what reason will we ban student politics? Never try it. If they will ban it, then they should ban political science. That's what Emmanuel Akrofi is also saying. Akuko Enna says, why should it be banned? Because everybody is feeling the heat, and more ever their future leaders and must learn and entertain themselves from this funny politics. Some people think this is some sort of entertainment on campus as well. Wow. Nyami says it should be well streamlined, but banning isn't an option. Abubakar Sadiq says, why should it be banned? What kind of okay, no, I don't think yours is in good taste. I won't read it. Musa Ali Koni says simply no, but let's try to see if the activities of such groups can be regulated. Okay, Frimpong Yao says we should weigh their contributions to their parties and Ghana at large in another round. If its creation has and causing problems, let's think about that too. Okay, lots of your comments coming through on facebook.com/Joy News on TV. I encourage you to keep the conversation going. Let's be talking. That's all 2015 is about. Okay, so what's the way to go? Some people are saying we should streamline, even with a comment. What's the how should we carry it forward finally?
Yeah, I think the key word is streamline. And that would, can be achieved by the introduction of regulations, school authorities, and of course I want to also include religious leaders as well, and the heads of civil society organizations must all come on board. We ought to conscientize students, let them understand that this democratic path we all agree as a nation to toe is not one of do or die. It should be one of finesse. I mean, we should interrogate issues. Let's deal with issues rather than personalities. Let us understand that these organizations essentially serve as conduit for us to become better political quote-unquote animals in the future. It's not a do and die affair. So civility is the key word. Okay. Regulations, so that when they violate the rules, then they ought to be reprimanded, just so that, I mean, it will deter others from towing on that tangent. Okay. So essentially the key word is streamlining, and that can only be achieved through the introduction of regulations, and perpetrators or people who violate these regulations ought to be made to face the music in order to deter others from doing same. I think that should be the best way of achieving.
Yes, you know, when you come to the various university or the college campuses, you realize that we're just a segment of the larger society out there. So whatever is happening out there in terms of our politicking, and you realize that for me, the challenge I have with all these groupings, test charts, test content, is the fact that as intellectual wings, we are supposed to tow a different path in terms of our politicking, civility, decorum, and all that. But we don't do that. When you come, you realize that the kind of space that is in our political, that is in our politics of insults, politics of attack, personal vilification, and all of these things is the same thing that we are practicing, and it must not be so. You know, when Hillary Clinton, for example, when she was in college, she was the president of the Republic Youth on their campus, but she defected to the Democrats when she realized that there was a foreign policy that she agreed with. So basically, when you compare what we are doing here with what happens in other developed democracies, you realize that these groupings exist based on ideology. But for us, most of us go and you are joining TestCon or test chat simply because either your parents are there or you come from a certain region. Yes, or you come from a certain region that maybe you know that region is associated, affiliated, is a word bank of a certain political party. But I think that ideologically, these groups must lead the way because you are intellectuals. It's supposed to be a discerning environment. We should be able to better discuss the economy better than the layman out there. We should be setting the agenda for the political parties. But when you follow the activities on campus or you attend their meetings, it's bad. And I think also that the older generation, sometimes when they have programs, they invite all these MPs and their political leaders. And when they come, they don't tell them anything different. They are supposed to set the agenda for them because it's an intellectual community. So
I tell you what, this is a conversation definitely to be continued. I picked something from what you said, and I think we should. I wouldn't say it now, but that is something we have to build on. But for now, we'll have to end it here. We started the show this morning by telling you about the Metro Mass Transit Company, the workers going on strike. We know the situation in Kumasi in the Ashanti region. We've also been monitoring what's happening here in the Greater Accra region. So here's Kemini Nyamani Amano with this report.